Welcome back to Tales from the Jade Scroll.
Have you ever looked up at the full moon and wondered why people say someone lives there?
According to one of China's most beloved legends, the moon became home to a woman whose kindness and courage have been remembered for thousands of years.
Her name was Chang'e.
But before she became part of legend, Chang'e lived a quiet and peaceful life with her husband, Hou Yi.
The great archer who saved the world from the 10 suns?
The very same. After restoring balance to the heavens, Hou Yi wanted nothing more than an ordinary life. He and Chang'e treasured the simple moments they had almost lost forever.
What kind of life did they have?
They worked side by side each day, welcomed neighbors into their home, and ended every evening watching the sun quietly disappear beyond the mountains.
After everything they had been through, those ordinary moments must have felt extraordinary.
According to the legend, they did. Neither of them longed for riches or glory. Being together was enough.
It sounds like nothing could disturb their happiness.
Hidden inside their home was a small jade box, carefully tucked away where only they knew to look.
What was inside?
A gift from heaven, one that had the power to change their lives forever.
They couldn't have known that such a small box would one day become the center of one of China's greatest legends.
And that story begins with a single decision.
So after everything they had been through, life finally became peaceful?
According to the legend, it did. The days passed quietly, and before long, the hardships of the past began to feel like distant memories. But the gift from heaven was still there. Hidden safely inside a small jade box rested the legendary elixir of immortality, untouched since the day Hou Yi had brought it home.
Did they ever talk about it?
They did. One quiet evening, after finishing dinner, Hou Yi and Chang'e sat outside their home watching the stars slowly appear.
What did Chang'e ask?
She smiled and asked, "Do you ever wonder what it would be like to live forever?"
And what did Hou Yi say?
Hou Yi was silent for a moment before answering. "Sometimes," he admitted, "not because I'm afraid of growing old, but because I wish I could spend more time with the people I love."
That's a very different reason.
Chang'e nodded. "Perhaps," she said, "it's because our time is limited that every day feels so precious."
I like that.
Together, they placed the tiny bottle back into its jade box.
So neither of them chose immortality?
No, they chose the life they already had.
They believed the decision was behind them.
They did, until one familiar visitor came walking up the path toward their home.
Someone Hou Yi trusted completely.
His name was Peng Meng.
So, who was Peng Meng?
He was one of Hou Yi's youngest students, arriving almost every morning before the sun had fully risen.
Before sunrise? That's already more dedication than I could manage.
Hou Yi noticed that too. While the other students stretched and yawned, Peng Meng was usually the first to pick up his bow.
Was he naturally talented?
He had talent, but what impressed Hou Yi even more was his determination. If an arrow missed its mark, Peng Meng didn't complain. He simply picked it up and tried again.
I like students like that.
So did Hou Yi.
Did Hou Yi only teach archery?
Never. A bow can protect, he often told his students, but it can also harm. Before you learn to aim with your hands, you must learn to aim with your heart.
That's a lesson everyone could use.
Hou Yi believed a person's character mattered far more than their skill.
And Chang'e knew all of his students?
Very well. When practice ended, she'd bring out tea and fresh fruit from the garden. The students would laugh together while Hou Yi shared stories from his travels.
I'm beginning to think they came back as much for Chang'e's tea as for Hou Yi's lessons.
Some of them probably did.
It sounds like Peng Meng became part of their daily life.
Before long, seeing him walk through the garden gate each morning felt as ordinary as watching the sunrise.
No one had any reason to question him?
None at all. He was a trusted student, a welcome guest, and someone Hou Yi believed would one day become a fine teacher himself.
So Peng Meng continued training with Hou Yi?
Day after day. As the weeks passed, his aim became steadier, his confidence grew, and Hou Yi was pleased to see how much he had improved.
I imagine that made Hou Yi proud.
It did. He often reminded all of his students that true success wasn't measured by how many targets they could hit, but by the choices they made when no one was watching.
That's one of those lessons that's about much more than archery.
Hou Yi had a habit of teaching those kinds of lessons.
Did Peng Meng ever ask about Hou Yi's adventures?
Quite often. Like everyone else, he loved hearing the story of the 10 sons and the journey to the heavenly court.
I suppose I'd have asked 100 questions.
Peng Meng probably would have too if he hadn't been trying to appear polite.
So he narrowed it down?
One afternoon, while they rested beneath the shade of a tree, he asked a question that seemed perfectly ordinary.
What was it?
"Master," he said, "what became of the reward the Queen Mother gave you?"
That's a reasonable question.
Hou Yi smiled and explained that the elixir had been carefully put away. He and Chang'e had agreed there was no reason to drink it.
That sounds exactly like them.
To Hou Yi, the reward had never mattered as much as the peaceful life they already shared.
And what happened after that?
The conversation drifted to other stories. Chang'e called everyone in for tea, the students laughed together in the courtyard, and before long it was time for everyone to head home.
Just another ordinary day.
One they all believed would be followed by many more.
The days continued to pass?
They did. Training continued each morning, and life around Hou Yi's home settled into a comfortable routine.
It sounds like everyone had found their place.
Hou Yi enjoyed teaching. Chang'e cared for their home and welcomed every visitor with the same kindness she showed her friends and neighbors.
I still think some of those students came back for the tea.
They certainly never turned it down.
And Peng Meng?
He remained Hou Yi's most devoted student. Yet after learning about the elixir, he found himself thinking about it more often than he expected.
Even though he knew it wasn't his?
At first, it wasn't greed. It was curiosity. He wondered why anyone would choose an ordinary life when immortality was within reach.
Did he ever ask Hou Yi again?
Not directly, but he listened more carefully whenever the conversation turned to the journey to heaven or the Queen Mother of the West.
Was Chang'e aware of any of this?
She noticed Peng Meng had become quieter. Sometimes, while the other students laughed together after practice, he would sit alone, lost in thought.
That doesn't necessarily make someone a bad person.
No, everyone wonders about impossible things from time to time.
So what made the difference?
The question stayed in Peng Meng's mind. Each day became a little harder to ignore.
The question about the elixir?
Yes. Why would anyone choose not to drink it?
Sometimes a single question can change everything.
At the time, though, it was only a question. Life carried on, and no one imagined how much that quiet curiosity would grow in the days ahead.
Did Peng Meng ever let go of the idea of the elixir? He tried. Yet as the days passed, the thought returned again and again. The more he remembered Hou Yi's words, the less he understood them.
He couldn't understand why anyone would refuse immortality.
To Peng Meng, it felt like turning away the greatest gift heaven could offer.
It's surprising how differently two people can see the very same thing.
Hou Yi saw the elixir as a responsibility. Peng Meng began to see it as an opportunity.
And that difference kept growing.
Then, one morning, Hou Yi was invited to help settle a disagreement in a nearby village. Before leaving, he wished Chang'e goodbye and promised he would return before sunset.
Just another ordinary day.
That's exactly what they both believed.
And Peng Meng knew Hou Yi would be away.
He watched his teacher disappear down the winding path until he could no longer be seen. He still had a choice. Every step toward Hou Yi's home was another chance to turn back. But sometimes the hardest person to argue with is ourselves. By the time Peng Meng reached the garden gate, he had already convinced himself he was doing the right thing. Chang'e didn't know any of this. She looked up from her work, smiled, and welcomed him inside just as she always had. She believed it was simply another visit from one of Hou Yi's students. She had no reason to believe otherwise. We'll pause our story here for a short break. When we return, Chang'e will face the most difficult decision of her life.
Not to Chang'e. She welcomed him with a smile, invited him inside, and poured a cup of warm tea. I think that tea deserves its own legend by now. It certainly made every guest feel at home. But Peng Meng didn't seem completely at ease. Chang'e noticed it almost immediately. She asked if something was bothering him. You've hardly said a word, she told him. Is your training becoming too difficult?
What did he say?
No, Peng Meng replied. I've just been thinking.
About your lessons?
He nodded at first, but after a long silence, he quietly asked, Will Master Hou Yi be home soon? An innocent question. It sounded that way. Chang'e smiled and explained that Hou Yi had gone to help some nearby villagers and would return before evening. Peng Meng seemed relieved. He lowered his eyes into his teacup and remained silent for another moment.
And then he finally asked what was really on his mind.
The gift from heaven, he began. Do you still keep it here?
Chang'e didn't see any reason to hide the truth.
She simply nodded.
Is it kept somewhere safe?
He asked. Chang'e smiled gently. Some treasures are safest when very few people know where they are. The room suddenly felt much quieter than before. Neither of them spoke for several long moments.
The silence lingered between them.
Neither of them wanted to say the next words.
At last, Peng Meng looked up. Master Hou Yi has no intention of using the elixir, he said. Neither do you.
He was trying to convince himself as much as Chang'e.
It certainly seemed that way.
What did Chang'e say?
Some gifts aren't meant to be claimed simply because they're within reach.
Peng Meng didn't agree.
He slowly rose to his feet.
That must have alarmed Chang'e.
She stood as well, setting her teacup aside.
Neither of them raised their voice.
Please, Peng Meng said. You and Master have already chosen your lives. Let me choose mine.
It almost sounds reasonable.
Yet Chang'e understood that some choices carry consequences far beyond one person.
She couldn't hand it over.
She gently shook her head. I can't.
What did Peng Meng do?
He stepped between Chang'e and the doorway.
There was no anger on his face anymore.
Only determination.
Chang'e realized she wasn't free to leave.
Her eyes drifted toward the room where the jade box was hidden.
In that single moment, she understood what she had to do.
She took one slow breath and made her decision.
Chang'e stood silently before the hidden jade box.
For just a moment, no one moved.
Peng Meng watched as she carefully opened the box and lifted out the tiny bottle that had rested there for so long.
He finally understood what she was about to do.
The confidence on his face disappeared.
Wait, he said. That's not what I wanted.
Chang'e looked at him with sadness, not anger.
She knew this wasn't the Peng Meng Hou Yi had welcomed into his home.
You still have a choice, she said softly. You can walk away.
For a heartbeat, it almost seemed as though he might.
But Peng Meng's eyes returned to the bottle.
The moment passed.
Please, he whispered. Give it to me.
Chang'e gently shook her head.
Some things, she said, are worth protecting, no matter the cost.
She raised the bottle.
Peng Meng rushed forward.
But he was only a single step too late.
Chang'e drank the elixir.
The room remained perfectly still.
For a few long moments, nothing happened.
She must have wondered if it had worked at all.
Then she felt strangely light, as though the weight of the earth itself had begun to fade away from her.
Her sleeves drifted gently around her.
The teacups on the table trembled, and a soft breeze seemed to fill the room, though every window remained closed. Chang'e looked down. Her feet slowly lifted from the floor.
Peng Meng reached out with both hands.
But this time, there was nothing he could do.
Chang'e drifted higher and higher above the courtyard, carried upward by the power of the elixir.
Below her, the world seemed to grow farther away.
She reached out instinctively, as though hoping she could somehow return to the earth.
But she couldn't stop rising.
At that very moment, Hou Yi was walking home along the familiar path,
Expecting another ordinary evening.
thinking about dinner, tomorrow's lessons, and the peaceful life waiting for him at home.
Then he looked up.
At first, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. High above the trees, someone was slowly rising into the sky.
Then he recognized her.
"Chang'e!" he shouted, dropping everything as he ran toward the house.
Was Peng Meng still there?
He was, standing motionless beside the open door.
Hou Yi looked past him.
The open jade box, the empty bottle, Chang'e drifting farther and farther away. He didn't need anyone to explain. In a single heartbreaking moment, he understood. He reached toward her anyway. Chang'e heard his voice and turned.
Their eyes met one last time.
"I'm sorry," she said softly. "I couldn't let the elixir fall into the wrong hands."
Hou Yi shook his head.
"You have nothing to be sorry for."
There was nothing else he could do.
For the second time in his life, Hou Yi discovered that even the greatest strength could not change what had already been set in motion.
Chang'e gave him one last smile.
Then, carried ever higher, she continued her silent journey toward the moon, while Hou Yi remained below, watching until she became a distant figure against the evening sky.
Hou Yi stood in the courtyard for a long time, unable to look away from the moon.
After everything they had shared, the silence must have felt overwhelming.
Eventually, he turned and slowly walked back into the house.
Was everything just as they had left it?
It was. Chang'e's teacup still rested on the table beside his own. The tea inside had not yet grown cold.
Just that morning, they had been sitting there together.
Hou Yi gently picked up her cup, holding it for a moment, before carefully placing it back where she had left it.
I imagine every room reminded him of her.
It did. Her favorite chair stood beside the window. The small basket she used in the garden rested by the door. Nothing had changed, yet everything felt different.
Sometimes the smallest things carry the biggest memories.
Hou Yi understood that better than anyone.
Did he go into the garden?
As the evening grew darker, he stepped outside once more. The flowers Chang'e had cared for swayed gently in the breeze, just as they had every evening before. It must have felt as though she were still there. In many ways, she was. Every flower, every path, every quiet corner of the garden reminded him of the life they had built together.
What did Hou Yi do then?
He carried a small table into the garden, just as they often had when enjoying the evening air.
Did he prepare tea?
He did. He poured one cup for himself.
And then, without even thinking about it, he poured a second.
Hou Yi looked at the empty place beside him and smiled sadly.
Some habits are born from love.
He lifted his eyes toward the moon, hoping that somehow, somewhere, Chang'e could still see the home they had shared.
Though Chang'e could no longer return to the earth, the story did not end there. What became of her? The legend tells that Chang'e made her home upon the moon, where she watched over the world she had left behind. She was farther away than ever, yet every night she could still look down upon the earth. And every time Hou Yi looked up at the full moon, he remembered the promise they had made to cherish the life they shared.
Is that where the Jade Rabbit appears?
In many versions of the legend, yes. A faithful Jade Rabbit kept Chang'e company, patiently preparing the elixir of life as the seasons passed. At least she wasn't completely alone. No, and neither was Hou Yi. Though they were separated by the heavens, the same moon shone over them both. That's a comforting thought. The legend also tells that each year, when the moon is at its brightest, families gather to admire its beauty, share mooncakes, and remember Chang'e's courage and sacrifice. It's a reminder that even when people are far apart, they can still be connected by love. Perhaps that's why this story has been told for so many generations. It reminds us that true love isn't measured by distance, but by the choices we make for one another. And maybe the next time we look up at a bright full moon, we'll remember Chang'e too. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of China's most beloved legends. Until next time, keep wondering, keep exploring, and keep turning the pages of the Jade Scroll. We'll see you in the next tale.